let's see, kind of jumping ahead here. So, Caliente, okay.
Well, I think that's a good point to bring up the Kona Kai, because Alicio, this is amusing to me, he was a member of the San Diego Yacht Club, and he had
Alicio was?
No,
Smith.
Oh
yeah.
He had a boat, and one day his boat ran into one of the docks or something at the San Diego Yacht Club, and the club was so challenged to keep going that they couldn't afford to fix the docks. So Smith said, well, I'm going to make my own yacht club. So he convinced the port director, who was then a Harbor Commission of the city of San Diego before the port was created, he convinced him to fill the land where Shelter Island is today so he could build this Kona Kai Club at the end of it, and said, screw you, San Diego Yacht Club, now I have my own yacht club.
And he built Shelter Island
in 1953. So I didn't realize that he was the one who came up with the idea of Shelter Island, because people don't realize there was this big sandbar in the middle of the harbor right there.
Yeah.
And the port said, they did it. You couldn't do that today. Things don't happen like that in San Diego these days. That happened within a few months, and this whole thing came to pass. And the Kona Kai Club, which is still in business, was Smith's private club.
It had Lawrence Welk there.
Yeah,
Lawrence Welk was a famous band. He eventually became an old person's musician, because old people would watch him on TV, and he started Lawrence Welk Village there, north of Escondido. So he's got some San Diego history. I want to go back a little bit, because he reminded me now, before or just when he had gotten NASCO, there was some problem with the pier at the foot of 7th Street. Mm-hmm. And he, I think, didn't ask, but he went ahead and knocked down the whole pier and fixed it up, and kind of let the harbor master know after it was done. The harbor master went along with it, but he said, really, we have to move this stuff down to 28th Street. Mm-hmm. So he was a bull in a china shop.
Actually, that's interesting to make that point, because in recent years there's been this big battle in Barrio Logan between industry and residents, and that's exactly around that moment when he moved the shipbuilding to Barrio Logan is the origin of all this pollution problem they have with that neighborhood, and the thinking in the city hall and elsewhere was, that's going to be our industrial zone. We're not going to have people living there, so they did not want to encourage people to live in Barrio Logan, but it was one of the few places that was not segregated, so.
And it was cheap.
African Americans and Mexican Americans and others could live there and not have to be excluded. So sometimes these things that start 100 years ago, 50 years ago, have an echo today in our same issues, because their origins were one thing and the people were somewhere else.
So I don't know what year we're in exactly right now, because this was all, he was just going after one business after another throughout the 40s, 50s, and then the 60s. Mm-hmm. It seems to me in the 60s, I'm trying to remember when he started the Yellow Cab. Was it before the 60s? I think it was one of his employees who came to him and said, by the way, I thought of this great investment. It's the cab companies. Mm-hmm. And he went out and I think he contingently bought Yellow Cab in
L.A.
And was that in L.A. first?
Yeah, right.
And Smith went along with it. Mm-hmm. He said, okay, and then they expanded it.
And he bought all the other Yellow Cab companies in Southern California, including in San Diego.
San Diego, Palm Springs, everywhere. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was amazing.
What does a steel company have to do with a taxi cab company? It's just this conglomerate. He was an acquirer of all these businesses in San Diego, and this is where the story, I think, becomes rather serious, because a lot of his problems later on were driven by the fact that his bank was also his piggy bank.